Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon, not here with Geeky Sparkles in this video, but we're going to talk about Twitter versus the media. It's really escalating. This is kind of a follow-up to a video we did the other day, talking about how NPR was very, very angry that they were labeled state-affiliated media, that they were called publicly funded, because some of their money comes from the government, right? NPR was actually set up by the government, and they've been labeled as such, just like Russian and Chinese propaganda outlets, and they're very, very angry about it. So they're going to quit. They're going to rage quit Twitter. So is PBS. PBS is rage quitting Twitter too, because PBS is angry that Elon Musk said it's publicly funded, but it totally is publicly funded. They're constantly begging for money. They're constantly taking donations. This is not a sustainable media outlet that sells advertising like, your NBCs and your ABCs and all of that. PBS and NPR are bankrolled by people with agendas. Let's be honest, they are. And supporters like you. And if you donate to PBS, you might get like a Cookie Monster backpack or something. I don't know. But we're going to talk about this because this is really interesting to watch the poop show. I don't know if I can say the other word this early in the video. The poop show going on because these media outlets like NPR and PBS and so many others have controlled the narrative on Twitter for so long, and they're very, very angry. Got Axios like, it's taking a toll on Twitter. It's taking a toll on Twitter. Where are people going to get their biased news from? Oh my God, Elon, you're so mean. And of course, he was taking the BBC to task too, over some of their lies. They couldn't even explain why they were accusing Twitter of spreading misinformation, and he pushed back. And this is just hilarious. It's hilarious to watch. And look, I'm actually not on Twitter much anymore, for a variety of reasons, mostly the time sink and the fact that there are some legit mentally ill people on Twitter that if you're active on Twitter will follow you home like a ghost from the haunted mansion, right? And I'd rather not deal with the psychopaths. I got enough going on in my life right now. Thank you very much. I just think it's really funny to watch Twitter, which was this bastion of journalistic integrity, get disemboweled within a few short months. It's all it took, a few short months, and certain outlets to be labeled as misinformation or to be labeled as state-funded propaganda, and they're going to rage quit, take their ball, and go home. We're going to talk about this before we get into it any further. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We've been talking about Twitter in the media because, look, outlets like NPR and PBS have been attacking gamers for a long time. They got into the Gamergate drama. Just recently, PBS put an article up attacking old school D&D players, saying that inherently OSR was racist and it was dominated by a bunch of racist bigots. And it's like, what the hell is wrong with you? And here it turns out it's just, state-funded, government-funded propaganda. So, Zero Hedge puts this up. Publicly funded PBS joins NPR in quitting Twitter. Musk says publicly funded PBS joins publicly funded NPR in leaving Twitter in a huff after being labeled publicly funded. Now more people know that NPR and PBS are publicly funded than ever before. Wait, you didn't know that National Public Radio and the Public Broadcasting Service were publicly funded? So this is really interesting stuff, guys. Of course, NPR is going to put a spin on it. Like, guys, we're just being picked on by Elon Musk. Now, NPR has laid a bunch of people off. NPR is not getting as much funding as they were. And of course, Musk has taken the BBC to task too. BBC has attacked nerds too. The BBC had a hit piece on Sonic the Hedgehog, if I remember, and they were basically using it as an in to attack people who didn't like the current version of Doctor Who. And of course, they have a vested interest in that because it's their show. Zero Hedge, publicly funded. PBS joins NPR in quitting Twitter. First, it was National Public Radio that stormed off of Twitter in a huff after being declared government-funded media. It says right there in the company's title, folks, national and public. And now it's another public as in non-private company that doesn't like being called out for what it is, that has decided to make a dramatic exit stage left the public broadcasting service, has followed NPR in rage quitting Twitter after the social media network labeled both organizations as government-funded media, which they are. They are. I'm sorry, they are. PBS stopped tweeting from our account when we learned of the change, and we have no plans to resume at this time, PBS spokesman Jason Phelps said in an email. We're continuing to monitor the ever-changing situation closely. The spat began after Twitter tagged NPR as state-affiliated media, a description it also uses for propaganda accounts from Russia, China, and the UK. Twitter later changed the wording to government-funded media, but the organization has called the description inaccurate and misleading because it's a nonprofit group with editorial independence. Needless to say, many disagree, with some pointing out that NPR has a clear pro-Democrat bias in its reporting. Of course they do. Of course they do. Remember when NPR released an article stating that right-wing extremists were deliberately running over protesters? I remember the Gamergate stuff. I remember especially with PBS recently, the Dungeons and Dragons articles. I'm like, this is unreal. This is unreal. How will NPR alert us about their refusal to report on stories that are bad for Democrats? So anyway. People are disagreeing. They said it's not. According to most recent reports, they receive less than 1% of its annual operating budget from the federal government. Less than 1%, not 11. It's 11%. 11% of taxpayer-funded dollars, according to NPR. Do your research. Of course, we had PBS being used, by Sesame Street being used to push COVID stuff. This is funny. They are what they are, right? And I think it's very accurate to disclaim that these media outlets are government funded, propped up by government entities, and therefore they are going to push whatever the government's agenda is. But it tends to only be one side of the aisle. Now, these outlets have no problem calling out, anyone that's affiliated at all with a right-wing outlet, or, according to Fox News, according to Breitbart, it is what it is, guys. And they're rage quitting because they can't control Twitter. This doesn't have anything to do with the label. I think it's like, oh, shit. Can I say shit now? We're far enough into the video. The jig is up. Everybody knows what we are now. We can't control the conversation on Twitter anymore. So let's just, leave and be like, hey, guys, that Elon Musk, he's just a toxic right-wing, alt-right bigot who makes electric cars and wants to send people to space. So this is NPR's take on it. NPR quits Twitter after being falsely labeled as state-affiliated media. NPR will no longer post fresh content to its 52 official Twitter feeds, becoming the first major news organization to go silent on the social media platform. In explaining its decision, NPR cited Twitter's decision to first label the network state-affiliated media, the same term it uses for propaganda outlets in Russia, China, and other autocratic countries. I don't want your newsletter, NPR. The decision by Twitter last week took the public radio network off guard. When queried by NPR tech reporter Bobby Allen, Twitter owner Elon Musk asked how NPR functioned. Musk allowed that he might have gotten it wrong. Twitter then revised its label on NPR's account to go government-funded media. The news organization says that's inaccurate and misleading, given that NPR is private. It's a nonprofit company with editorial independence that receives less than 1% of its $300 million from the federally funded Cooperation for Public Broadcasting. Other guys said it was 11%. By going silent on Twitter, NPR's chief executive says the network is protecting its credibility and its ability to produce journalism without a shadow of negativity. This is fun. Isn't this fun? Like, look, I'm not a huge fan of some of the things that Elon Musk has done with Twitter, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time over there until things get fixed. And I really was not a fan of what he did with Substack and all that thing. That seemed kind of petty. But by God, I am loving the media being taken to task. I'm loving it because I said before, Twitter is a critical node. All of the cancel culture, all of the bizarro activism that we have seen over the last 6 or 7 years, most of it can be traced back to Twitter. And Musk has just tossed a hand grenade into that. And you don't have to like the guy. I personally think Twitter is a cluster right now. I don't think it's working as well as it should. I think he might have gotten a little trigger happy and fired some of the wrong people maybe, because it's just not working very well. But it's beautiful to watch this happen. So many things changing in such a very short amount of time. Can you believe all these social media outlets, all these companies, Facebook and Twitter, they're all laying off massive amounts of people. The media is completely upended because of one guy buying Twitter. Everything's in just absolute chaos right now, chaotic state. We've got, signs of cancel culture being canceled. J.K. Rowling getting a 10-year deal with HBO to reboot Harry Potter. It doesn't matter what Twitter says anymore, because Twitter doesn't matter anymore. It really doesn't. Don't you think this is funny? Don't you think this is fun? I think it's fun. I think it's hilarious. I think it's long overdue. I think we needed to do this 5 or 6 years ago before things got ridiculous. The downside, whatever the downside is, doesn't change the fact. NPR CEO John Lansing said, "I would never have our content go anywhere that would risk our credibility." In a BBC interview posted on Wednesday, Musk suggested he may further change the label to publicly funded. His words did not sway NPR's decision makers. Even if Twitter were to drop the designation altogether, Lansing said the network will not immediately return to the platform. Yeah, but they cheered it on when they would label people's tweets as being like COVID misinformation or election misinformation, even if it wasn't, even if it was a very mild take. They were cool with that. They were completely cool with that, but they don't like being labeled, do they? At this point, I've lost my faith in the decision-making at Twitter. I need some time to understand whether Twitter can be trusted again. Yeah, good luck. It's not Twitter you have to worry about. It's PBS, it's NPR, it's MSNBC. It's all the Kotakus and the Polygons, which, again, they got their asses handed to them when they called for the Hogwarts Legacy boycott, and it didn't work. 5 years ago, I think it would have worked. PBS joins NPR in quitting Twitter over state-backed label. The public broadcasting service has followed National Public Radio in quitting Twitter after the social media network labeled both organizations as government-backed media. PBS stopped tweeting from our account. At least they don't have, 57 or whatever it is. When we learned of the change, and we have no plans to resume it at this time, we're continually monitoring the ever-changing situation. Didn't they just say that? The other people said that too. The spat began after Twitter tagged NPR as state-affiliated media. Description it also uses for propaganda accounts from Russia and China. Twitter later changed the wording to government-funded media, but the organization has called the description inaccurate and misleading because it's a nonprofit group with editorial independence. Yeah, so there we go, guys. They're all in lockstep. You need to leave. Meanwhile, other for-profit media outlets, including those on the left, are paying Elon Musk for their gold check because they know they depend too much on Twitter. So we'll see how long this lasts. Remember when everybody was like, hey, we're all going to quit Twitter. We're not going to advertise on Twitter because, we're not blah, 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 alt-right. Yeah, well, I think they're going to realize just how important Twitter has been to their narrative, but they're just very angry they can't control it anymore. And this is the first domino to get knocked over. We're going to see a lot of dominoes get knocked over. And NPR at this point can't afford to lose eyeballs. They're laying people off. And this isn't going to do them any favors. I'm just saying. So I'm going to wrap this up. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We'll talk later. Help support the channel. Go to thereef.support and get early access to podcasts, videos, and other content. That's thereef.support.